Auschwitz. Over 1 million people entered and never came out. Everyone knew the odds. No one leaves Auschwitz alive. So why would anyone volunteer to go in? Not as a prisoner dragged in chains, but as a spy. His name was Witold Pilecki, a Polish resistance fighter, husband, and father. And in 1940, he undertook one of the most daring missions in human history, to get himself imprisoned in Auschwitz so he could fight it from the inside. He smuggled out reports of Nazi atrocities before the world believed they were real. He organized underground resistance inside the camp. He gave the world its first eyewitness account of the Holocaust at unimaginable risk. And yet, you've probably never heard his name. This is the story of the man who volunteered for Auschwitz. What kind of man volunteers to be imprisoned in a Nazi death camp? Witold Pilecki wasn't born into a world of peace. He arrived in 1901 in the sprawling Russian Empire, in modern Belarus. But from an early age, he was loyal to one nation and one nation only, Poland. The history of Poland was an inspiration. It constantly struggled for its identity and independence. Sometimes great, often caught between powerful empires. By his late teens, he was already fighting for his homeland. He served with distinction in the Polish-Soviet War of 1919 to 1921. He witnessed firsthand the brutal realities of conflict, the struggle for freedom, and the sacrifices it demanded. These experiences and his powerful religious faith gave him courage. But not reckless courage. It was rooted in a sense of responsibility. Yes, duty to his nation, but also to his fellow man, and the principles of freedom and justice. He was a patriot in the truest sense, one that was willing to take the weight of the world on his shoulders. But the peace and justice he'd fought for? It was about to be shattered, and he'd be called to the ultimate test. The peace Pilecki had fought for did not last. On September 1st, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland from the west. Just over 2 weeks later, the Soviet Union attacked from the east. Two totalitarian giants, Hitler and Stalin, carved up the nation like spoils of war. Poland once again was crushed beneath the weight of history. But the Polish spirit was not so easily extinguished. Even in defeat, its people resisted. Underground movements sprang to life in the shadows, brave, desperate attempts to defy the occupiers. One of the earliest and most determined of these was the Tajna Armia Polska, the secret Polish army. Pilecki was a founding member. He wasn't just fighting for territory, he was fighting for an idea. That Poland was more than just a line on a map. That freedom still had meaning, even when surrounded by barbed wire and tanks. But soon, new rumors began to spread. Whispers of a German camp being built near the town of Auschwitz, a place the Nazis were calling Auschwitz. What little information they had was horrifying. Trains went in, but no one came out. It was a black hole swallowing lives. The resistance knew they had to learn more. But how? That's when Pilecki stepped forward, with a proposal so audacious, so unthinkable, that many thought he'd lost his mind. He would get himself arrested and sent into Auschwitz, not to escape, not to survive, but to resist from within the belly of the beast. On September 19th, 1940, Pilecki walked straight into a Nazi street roundup in Warsaw. He wasn't caught by chance, he sought it out. Using false identity papers under the name Tomasz Serafiński, he was beaten, arrested, and eventually loaded onto a transport to Auschwitz. He became prisoner number 4859. The moment he passed beneath the infamous Iron Gate, Arbeit macht frei, he entered a world of nightmares. Hunger gnawed constantly. Beatings were routine, and executions became background noise. Death was everywhere, for any reason or no reason at all. Auschwitz was not a prison. It was a factory designed to annihilate the human spirit. And yet, Pilecki endured. In that unimaginable place, he began to build something even more improbable: resistance. Secretly and at great personal risk, he founded the Związek Organizacji Wojskowej, the Union of Military Organization, an underground network of prisoners sworn to fight from within. He recruited carefully, built trust slowly. Small, self-contained cells meant that even if someone was caught, the rest could survive. Their mission was as ambitious as it was suicidal. Gather intelligence, report on atrocities, sabotage operations, and perhaps most importantly, keep hope alive. Inside that camp of death, Pilecki became a soldier once more. Through a combination of daring couriers and ingenious methods of concealment, Pilecki's reports began to make their way out of Auschwitz. They passed through the Polish underground, reached the government in exile in London, and eventually landed on the desks of Allied leaders. What he described was almost beyond belief. Gas chambers, crematoria, selections that decided who would live and who would die. The systematic extermination of Jews, Poles, Roma, and countless others. With factory-like efficiency, it was the Holocaust in real time, reported from the inside. Pilecki even proposed an armed uprising. If only the Allies would supply the weapons and support. But the response was maddeningly slow. The reports were too horrific to believe. Could such things truly be happening? Bureaucrats hesitated. Commanders dismissed the idea as too dangerous. Bombing the camp might kill the very people they were trying to save. Imagine the despair. Pilecki was risking everything, living in hell, trying to alert the world. And the world did not listen. After nearly 3 years inside Auschwitz, the risk of exposure grew too great. In April 1943, Pilecki and 2 comrades launched a daring escape under cover of night. They made it. But even then, freedom was not his end goal. It was a means to continue the fight. Back on the outside, he submitted a full report, over 100 pages detailing the machinery of death he had witnessed. He pleaded once more for action. The Allies praised his courage. But they still did nothing. Undeterred, Pilecki returned to the resistance and fought in the 1944 Warsaw Uprising, a brutal 63-day battle to liberate the Polish capital. He fought with the same resolve, the same belief in the cause of freedom, but once again, betrayal followed. The Soviets sit across the river, watching and waiting. They let the city burn. The uprising is crushed, Warsaw is destroyed, Pilecki is captured, sent to a German POW camp. He survives, again, but his war isn't over. In May 1945, the war in Europe ended. The guns fell silent and Nazi Germany was defeated. Pilecki was liberated from the German POW camp at Murnau. After years of imprisonment, torture, and war, he should have returned to a hero's welcome, to a free Poland. But the country he loved had changed. The Soviets had filled the vacuum left by the Nazis. Poland was liberated, but not free. A new regime took hold, one draped in red banners and backed by Stalin's iron will. For many, it was a time to rebuild. But Pilecki couldn't rest. He had seen one form of tyranny up close. He knew the signs of another. So he did what he had always done. He resisted. He began gathering intelligence once again. This time, it was about Soviet repression, political arrests, executions, the erosion of Polish sovereignty. He smuggled reports to the West, hoping to expose the brutality of the new regime, just as he had done with the Nazis. But this time, the net closed faster. In 1947, the secret police of the communist regime, the Urzęd Bezpieczeństwa, or UB, caught up with him. He was arrested, tortured for months. The methods were brutal: sleep deprivation, beatings, psychological torment. The same tactics used by the Nazis, now employed by fellow Poles under Soviet command. Through it all, Pilecki refused to betray his comrades. He took the full weight of suspicion onto his own shoulders. His trial in 1948 was a sham, a political theater piece written in advance. He was accused of espionage and treason, not because he had betrayed Poland, but because he never had. In truth, his only crime was loyalty to a vision of Poland that was free, democratic, and independent. He was sentenced to death on May 25, 1948. Witold Pilecki was executed by a shot to the back of the head. He was 47 years old, no ceremony, no grave. His body was buried in a secret location, unmarked and forgotten, a deliberate attempt to erase him from history. But not before he left behind one last message. In the days before his execution, he reportedly told his wife during a final visit, "I have tried to live my life so that in the hour of my death, I would rather feel joy than fear." These were not the words of a defeated man. They were the words of a soldier who had faced darkness and never blinked. A man who had volunteered for hell, not once but twice. For decades, Witold Pilecki's name was buried under layers of censorship and fear. The communist regime declared him a traitor. His story was erased from textbooks, banned from newspapers. Even mentioning him could get you arrested. He became a ghost in his own country, a dangerous memory. But history has a way of resurfacing. After the fall of communism in 1989, the truth began to emerge. Pilecki's reports were published. Historians rediscovered his heroism. Schools and streets were named after him. He was posthumously awarded Poland's highest honors, including the Order of the White Eagle. His face now appears on postage stamps. His story is taught in classrooms. His legacy, once silenced, has become a symbol of courage in the face of overwhelming evil. Witold Pilecki wasn't just a soldier, he was a moral giant. A man who walked into the heart of darkness, not with a weapon, but with the truth. He reminds us that the fight for justice doesn't end when the war does, that resistance isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, lonely, and unthanked, but it matters.